now we're going to enter into our second topic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And some of y'all had some really good questions, so I'm glad that Bishop is here to be able to answer them. So the first question, Bishop, is what are some things we can do that does not desensitize to the Catholic life? Like, for example, we see some people are okay or are enjoying not going to Mass because of the pandemic.
Yeah, when you close the churches and dispense people from the Sunday obligation, there's lots of possible negative ramifications of that. And some people could just get really comfortable not going. And they're losing the opportunity for the grace of the sacraments. I'm glad that we've reopened our churches, and I'm glad that more and more we're expanding opportunities for people to receive the sacraments, because we need the grace of the sacraments. So what do I recommend for young people? I recommend going to Mass and receiving the sacrament of reconciliation, confession on a regular basis. I think those two sacraments provide us with the grace we need, the sacramental grace we need to grow in holiness and to resist the devil. We need the grace of those two sacraments, and so I highly encourage anybody watching this video to do those two things on a regular basis. But then, in general, my advice is practice the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. If you don't know what they are, just look them up. The corporal works of mercy, the spiritual works of mercy. That's what we ought to be doing. And one of those things in the corporal works of mercy is find somebody that you can serve. Because there's always somebody in this world who's got it worse off than you do. And so find ways to serve. And that's a way to find holiness and a way to find happiness.
Thank you. And then continuing with that same topic, I know you kind of mainly answered it, but how do we get back to normal? Or is there a normal? Or bring the people during this pandemic a more reverent love for the Catholic life and Mass?
We don't know how it's going to be when this pandemic has passed. It's possible that things won't be done in exactly the same way they were before. Like, remember when we had the tragic loss of the Twin Towers in New York City on September the 11th. There are things that our society does differently now than before that. Your experience of flying on an airplane is completely different now than it was before, because things were put into place, safety precautions were put into place. And I would not be surprised if this coronavirus crisis leads us to have certain precautions that we take in our daily lives that are different than the way it was before. So we won't necessarily go back to the exact same routines. We might have certain extra ways to care and to protect us against the transmission of germs. Because if it's not the coronavirus, it'll be something else. People suffer from communicable diseases all the time. And so I would not be surprised if what we go back to is a little bit different than before. However, keep this in mind. We can practice the faith. We can receive the sacraments. And what I recommend of any of us, especially our young adults, is talk to your peers about what the Mass is. Invite people to come to church with you. Talk with your peers about the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. Let people know this great gift that we have and invite people to share it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, community. This student asked, during this pandemic, how can we seek or experience Jesus more?
Yeah, a lot of times when people are thinking about the spiritual life, they put it in terms of seeking God, seeking Jesus. But remember, Jesus is already right there by your side. He's everywhere. He's divine. He's right there with you. He's waiting for you to open up your heart to Him. He's already right there. And so seeking Jesus, I think, is mostly about opening our hearts to the one who is already right there next to us and listening to what He has to say, reading the Scriptures, praying with the Gospels, receiving Him in the Eucharist, so that He has more ways to get through to us. That's what I think we need to do. So what I recommend all of us do is in our prayer time, tell the Lord honestly what's going on. If you're afraid, if you're angry, if you're struggling, if you're lonely, share that with the Lord in prayer. And pray with the scriptures. Spend quiet time in prayer so that you have shared honestly your experiences with the Lord. And then you open yourself up in silence and allow Him to respond to you. And He will respond through the scriptures, through the silent time you spend in prayer. For example, I highly recommend spending time with the Lord in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, whether it's exposed or locked inside the tabernacle. The Lord speaks to us in His real presence. And He'll speak to us and He'll let us know how He wants us to handle this crisis.
Thank you. And I think you just told me before our meeting that the St. Margaret's Perpetual Adoration Chapel is open up to 4 people, correct?
Yes. We had 3 main Perpetual Adoration Chapels in this diocese.
Mm-hmm.
Sacred Heart in Abilene, St. Mary's in Odessa, and St. Margaret here on the east side of San Angelo. At a certain point with this coronavirus crisis, they all closed their doors because they're enclosed spaces and people were concerned that they would be in there. They were concerned because they were in there with people who were coughing and sneezing and wheezing, and they thought, I don't want to get sick in here when I come here to pray. Mm-hmm. So we shut them down for a while, and the ones in Abilene and Odessa are still closed, as far as I know. But the one here in San Angelo is open. Father Santiago, the pastor, reopened it. Mm-hmm. There's a limit of 4 people in there at any one time, but it's open 24 hours. And there's instructions on the door for making sure that it's clean and safe. So I recommend using it.
Awesome. Thank you. So you heard it from the bishop himself. The Perpetual Adoration here in San Angelo is open. Hopefully y'all can go down there and experience, be with Jesus.